Welcome to Cosmic Comics, Games and Collectibles, your zen of geekism. We carry comics old and new, magazines, toys, games like Pokemon, Magic, D&D. Want Godzilla, Ultraman, Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Funko Pops? You'll find it all here. Shop our Cosmic Sound Room and pick up a record or two. Enjoy our Comic Coffee Lounge with a cup of Sasquatch coffee or a delicious menu item while geeking out over a super cool movie on our big screen. Come by and say hello to Maui. Cosmic Comic, Games and Collectibles. Superman loves us, and so will you.
Hi everyone, Daphne Lage here. Join Nita Lanning and me on the Ragin' to the Vlogs show, where we talk about everything, nothing, and all the bits in between. Looking for hour-long conversations about indie comics, social media marketing, and crowdfunding, with the occasional rant and story time? Head on over to the Ragin' 2 channel on YouTube, Mondays through Fridays at 11 a.m. Eastern to join in the chat.
Hit the button.
And if it's not your favorite podcast, by golly, we aim to make it so. You just let us know what you want to see. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Tell us what we're doing right. And we enjoy the occasional back pat now and then so that we can continue to bring you the content that you will keep coming back for. Good evening. I am RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com, myopic proofreader for Critical Blast Publishing, Chief Envelope Licker for Critical Blast Logistics, and I answer the phones for Critical Blast Consulting. And I need to take some breathing lessons if I'm going to get into any more businesses, because there are too many words in that sentence, only one period. That's a problem I'm going to have to work out. Maybe I can become like Critical Blast Copyright Services and write my own ad copy. There we go. And then, if it works out, I'll write your ad copy. That's the genius of all these businesses here. Tonight, we are going to be looking at a crowdfunder on Indiegogo that lives up to its name, Ascendant, because this thing is just climbing up the charts tonight. And this is its first day launch. This is Ascendant Star-Spangled Squadron, $10,000 fixed goal at 23,871 right now, and that's with the last refresh I just did. So please welcome with me to the show so we can find out how to do this ourselves. Alexander, the man behind all this. Alexander, how are you, sir?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me on the show.
Man, I'm glad to have you, and very, very grateful that you chose to come on our show for what is your launch day for this.
That's right. That's right. It's launch day.
I looked at this. I looked at this right before the show. I'm like, wait a second. This was a pre-launch just like 6 hours ago when I had this up. So it changed on me. I'm like, oh my God, we're launching here on our show. This is great.
The timing couldn't have been better when I connected with you and you said we could do it today. It was perfect. So thanks very much for giving me the chance to get on here on launch day. It's super exciting. We're pumped.
Well, you're going to be very, very busy over the next several days as this thing takes off. Wow, we're going to talk about how you got to that $23,000 mark as we go through here, because you got a very unique kind of tier on this that I've not seen on a campaign before, and it paid off in spades for you. Meanwhile, we got several people in the chat who have been waiting for us. Mr. DJ Scheffler, good evening. Good evening to you, sir. Glad that you're here. Nicholas Gear, always happy to see you in the chat, sir. My good friend Jason from Sci-Fi for Me TV. Yes, it's I've actually got a Yeti costume in the closet that I could be wearing for these shows, but I don't need it anymore. I've sort of grown into the part like Captain Kangaroo did over years. And Hex Allen Comics, thought you had the exclusive rights to use the word Squadron? Well, Squadrons, there's a lot of comics out there with Squadron in them, like All-Star Squadron.
Great word. Yeah.
Yes, it's a very cool word. Does it mean anything special? It's just a group of people who fight, right? I mean,
I think it comes from cavalry, right? So it was the cavalry equivalent of a battalion. So you had a platoon and a troop, and then a battalion and a squadron.
So there's probably like a number of people identified in it. You're going to get a wordsmith in here who's going to say, hey, you're 2 people short of a squadron. You need to recruit some people. Anyhow, this is a very interesting book. I've been reading the PDF that you sent us in advance. So I'm getting a handle on, who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, but not quite totally. But why don't you walk us through the elevator pitch here? Tell us about the world of Ascendant.
Yeah, my pleasure. So Ascendant is a universe as a whole that's kind of at a day zero moment. A lot of other comic book universes go with the trope that superheroes have been around as long as comic books have been around. Or they adopt the trope that superheroes are just emerging, but nobody's ever heard of them before. Similar to how in The Walking Dead, there's this trope that zombies didn't exist in the world, which is why nobody knew to shoot them in the head and stop it from happening. What I went with for Ascendant is it's an origin story set more or less in our real world where everyone knows about superheroes. And so when people begin to manifest superpowers, they think to themselves, well, gosh, I'm a superhero, or gosh, I'm a supervillain. And the US government is faced with this situation where humans of mass destruction are emerging, and what is it going to do about it? And it has this conclusion that, if it starts to field a man who can kill you with his mind from 10 kilometers away, that's absolutely terrifying. But, if they shave his head and put him in a funny jumpsuit and call him Professor X-Ray, that's a PR campaign, and people will feel great about that. And so the U.S. creates this superhero team called the Star-Spangled Squadron, which is it's technically a military team, but they're all given purposefully, superhero code names and flashy superhero outfits as a way of making the American people feel better about the fact that, essentially humans of mass destruction have become real. And they all work for the Coast Guard because the Coast Guard.
I've done military consulting before. I worked for a purple suit agency at a transportation command at Scott Air Force Base. Coast Guard was the last line of military branches that I would be thinking of for this.
That's the joke, right? But the Coast Guard is the only branch of the armed services that can also do domestic law enforcement. So it's a workaround to get around posse comitatus. So by making them Coast Guard, they can have them deploy and fight crime, and they can also have them deploy internationally as necessary. So that's the big picture of the universe. This particular graphic novel tells the origin of Project Ascension, which was the U.S. Cold War project to create superheroes, how it goes wrong, and they kind of blunder into creating supervillains, and then they kind of desperately flail around to assemble their current supergroup, and it has its first confrontation. So that's the story we're telling in this graphic novel, and it's part of a larger universe that I created for the Ascendant role-playing game, which I kickstarted last year, and which spent 12 weeks on the bestseller charts over at DriveThruRPG. So we hit #1 bestseller with the role-playing game, and I think some of the enthusiasm for the graphic novel is coming from fans of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I tell people all the time, we talk almost exclusively about crowdfunded comics. You start looking at some of these crowdfunded games, and this is a yard sale. This is because the money that goes into RPG and tabletops is phenomenally huge.
Yeah, it's big.
So did we talk about the game last year? Because it seems familiar now.
No, you and I didn't talk about the game. I did get some good press on it. It got picked up in a few places. The game itself, it's a tabletop role-playing game inspired by the old Phase Rip Marvel superheroes game and the DC Heroes Meg's exponential gaming system. And it uses logarithmic math so that you can, do anyone from, like a Silver Age Superman down to Punisher, all in the same system. And the game has done tremendously well. It's my best-selling role-playing game of all time. We hit platinum in 2 weeks. We hit #1 and stayed there on the charts for 2 weeks. It's been on the bestseller list for 12 weeks. So clearly the combination of heroes and capes, sexy women, and logarithmic math was the silver bullet my business had been missing.
It's definitely the math. It's not the sexy women, because
I think it's the math.
Yeah, we're all smart people, intelligent readers in comics. So you said that the government created these. Did the government create all the super characters, or did they create the villains by accident and then said, hey, help us, pre-existing super characters?
Yeah, so the graphic novel doesn't fully explain, just for limits of space, exactly everything that's going on in the background. And, that also lets us have room to tell more stories in the future as well. If you read the role-playing game, essentially the premise is that humans can exhibit certain genes which can be expressed. And when they become expressed, you begin to create metaplasts. And metaplasts are similar to chloroplasts. Chloroplasts allow a plant to take solar energy and use it for its purposes. A metaplast allows a human to take 0-point energy and use it for his purposes, channeled through his biological consciousness. And they don't particularly know why humans are starting to have these genes become expressed. They know that they are at an accelerating rate. And the US government has some technology that enables it to accelerate that even further and trigger metaplast expression. And so they also know that the Chinese are working on it through a similar approach, which they call Qigong somatic science. The Russians are working on it through what they call psychotronic science. And so there's this whole project where they're trying to do it as well. And unfortunately, it goes terribly wrong for the US government. And their initial plan is doesn't just fail, it's a catastrophe. And so they end up having to turn to some heroes that have emerged through more organic methods. So the Star-Spangled Squadron is a little bit of a ragtag band that they've pulled together after the initial effort of creating an elite Cold War force has totally failed.
I love the terms that you put together here, because they're unique, that I haven't heard them anywhere before, and yet I know exactly what they mean when I hear them. I don't have to say, where's the glossary of terms on this? When you say metaplast, I'm like, oh yeah, metahumans and cytoplasts and stuff like that. And then you used the term earlier that they were humans of mass destruction.
Yes.
Again, not a phrase I've ever heard put together before. Know exactly what it means when I hear it.
Yeah, so the game actually has a method of rating the superheroes based on their power in terms of how many soldiers they can wipe out essentially in a short period of combat. So that's called their threat value or their challenge rating, which is really good for the game, but it's also something that becomes referenced in the world as well, where so-and-so is the highest threat value ascendant we've ever faced, etc. So it definitely has this kind of vibe to it of the real world military would be trying to grapple with is how do you, are these soldiers? How do you evaluate them on the battlefield? How do you deploy them? Things like that.
Yeah, I totally get that. I always figured that, at the rate that superheroes were emerging in the Marvel universe, and they were, every time that I came up with through like Gen 13 and X-Men and stuff like that. Like they always get pulled into a government school or a private school. Like, at the rate they're going, at some point, the public schools are going to have to offer something for super people to keep them in school, or they're not going to have anybody left to teach.
Right. So at this point in the world, it's the very first generation of heroes emerging. So the comic covers the first public battle between a superhero and a supervillain. And when it starts, people think they're watching a movie, right? They literally think they're watching a movie. They're complaining about it on Twitter. And it's this slow dawning realization that it's actually happening and what that means for the world. And, Buzz Post demands that the government get involved to regulate superheroes, and Rock's News is warning of the dangers of the superhero gap and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens, obviously, is the world begins to spiral out of control. You think about how much change we had in the world as a whole just from COVID, right? Now, COVID is certainly a very bad thing that changed the world, but the emergence of, humans of mass destruction would be 2 orders of magnitude more impactful than that. And so it's very much about the future direction of the universe is going to be what's the new normal, and really watching what starts as our world just careen into total chaos.
I can only imagine because we don't deal well with world-changing events that happen very quickly.
Right.
Like you said, you've seen it with COVID. It spiraled into just the conspiracy theories alone that must exist in your world. Would be worthy of their own comic books and stories. The characters that we're going to meet in the book, are they already pre-created characters in the game?
They are.
And this is, sort of like a comic book retelling of the first campaign?
Yes,
or a couple
that's exactly correct. It's a comic book retelling of the first campaign. Yeah.
Okay. How do you do that and keep it fresh for the people who are familiar with the game? Because they're like, I know how this plays out. I know exactly.
Oh, sure. So the a lot of the information in the comic isn't presented in detail in the game. The backstory of the game is all presented in an epistolary fashion through leaked emails, DARPA papers, news stories, and so you're just kind of getting this surface level gloss as to what happened, and then you have the characters presented with their illustration and et cetera, et cetera. For instance, the entirety of the major battle in Chapter 3. Is going to be completely new. How that plays out, that's not explained in the book at all. A lot of the backstory that's presented in the book, of course, is actually fake because it's all government propaganda and news spin. And so you have to kind of read between the lines to understand what's actually going on. And so in the comic, we start to see what's actually going on.
So I'm going to scroll down here and see if we can. First of all, we'll see what the tiers are, and then hopefully we'll get us an introduction to the characters themselves. Awesome. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to check this page out. It was a pre-launch page before this show started, so this is all going to be all new to me here. What you're going to get is, of course, the book, and this is 96 pages. So this has to be perfect bound book.
Yeah. Yep. It's finished. We just need to pay for the cost of printing and publishing. But the book is penciled, inked, colored, lettered, laid out, ready to hit the presses.
Okay, so given that everything's done, you're just ready to go to press. Why do you have such a conservative shipping date estimate? Because this is March and you got a November ship date. Is there more to be done on something else?
Because of World War III.
Oh, well, there is that, yes.
Yeah, that's literally it. My last book, I was all set. I was scheduled to have it released in March, and it sat for months sitting in a harbor waiting to be put on a container ship. Then it was on a container ship waiting to be unloaded. Then it was sitting in a freight warehouse waiting to be put on the trucks. And some backers waited 9 months to get their books. It was ridiculous. Yeah. And so I just said to myself, like, I'm literally watching the free world careen into World War III. Maybe I should give myself an extra 6 months.
Okay, so it's very possible that after this campaign, y'all might just get your books by surprise early.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the plan. I've got the vendors lined up. It's the same people who did the RPG, which is the most beautiful book I've ever done. So they're lined up. I've got the bid. The book is ready. I just, is the game a tabletop RPG? Says Eric. Yes, it is. The game is a tabletop RPG called Ascendant. It's available at Drive-Thru RPG.
Excellent. Do you have you have an online store for that we can link out to people?
Oh, I do. It's Autark Emporium. I can.
You're going to spell that in the chat for me.
Yeah.
If you put in the private chat, I'll drop it in the regular chat, and then people can, click on that and add something to it. There we go. All right. So here you are, folks. If you want to check out the game itself, this is the link.
Get the drink link to Drive-Thru RPG too.
Yeah, I heard what you said, but there's no way I would have spelled it. Oh yeah, and it's on Drive-Thru RPG as well.
There's the link there. Yeah. All right. Sorry, I derailed us by talking about.
No. That's what we do is we stop and we service the chat.
All right.
They're why we have a show. So, trading cards. Now these are stat cards. So they're not just trading cards, but I'm guessing they have a game component to them.
Yep, they've got the stats for the characters on them. So I thought, I saw a lot of other comic book crowdfunding campaigns for doing trading cards. I thought that was super cool, and I always make sure I buy the trading cards when I back a comic. And then I thought to myself, well, this is so cool because I have this RPG. I could actually put the character stats on the back of the cards, and now it's not just a collectible card, but you could actually use it to play the game.
Yeah, and it's a reference card for the game, though.
Exactly. And I just kind of fell in love with the concept. So next thing I knew, I was, putting together all these trading cards.
That's cool. The reason I ask is because I know there's another campaign that Greg Levitt is doing with Gun Demon, and he's got a trading card pack in there that it's a playable deck. It's like a CCG game.
That's awesome.
And what he's doing is he's opening the game up so that people can create the same cards using the math for their system. Say, hey, here's how my characters would line up in your game system, and then they'll be able to, for instance, if you were doing Ascendant 2, you could say, hey, here's 3 characters all lined up and ready to go into this deck. You can throw them in any deck you want, and they're already playable.
That's really clever. Yeah,
just whip them out and surprise people. Like, what is this Aurora card? I've never seen this. And then you're like, well, this comes from Ascendant. You should read that graphic novel. And then it's kind of
awesome.
a subversive viral marketing campaign.
I love it. Yeah.
So I do know that this is the bad guy, at least a bad guy.
Yep. Manticore.
This is Manticore. Yeah. And the interesting thing about Manticore was that he was called that before he looked like that.
Correct. So the Manticore is actually a Persian mythical monster. It means man-eater. And, it got co-opted by Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. But it's a mythic monster in the way the Cyclops was a Greek monster. And the character, Sergeant Andrew Dillon, was a U.S. Special Forces soldier who was doing covert operations in Iran, similar to how there was Operation Phoenix, where they were doing covert operations in Vietnam. Where he was assassinating targets. And so he became terribly feared, and they called him the man-eater for all of the assassinations he succeeded on. And he ends up becoming the fall guy or being exposed for his crimes, depending what perspective you ask. His perspective is different than the journalists that expose him, obviously. And so ends up sentenced at Fort Leavenworth, and he volunteers for Project Ascension as a way of having his sentence commuted. And Project Ascension is taking volunteers because everybody keeps dying, and so they're not allowed to use active duty soldiers anymore. So they're starting to take volunteers from the prison population, and their expectation is maybe most chance you're going to die. Maybe we'll get a little bit of an effect, but obviously things go very wrong.
Now this gentleman here looks to be sort of your icon, your flagpole of the team.
Yeah, so that's American Eagle, aka Bill Goddard. He's a married father of 2 who's a firefighter and a U.S. Army veteran, lives in Freedom, Nebraska. His powers have emerged organically. He just considers it a gift from God, and it's his duty to help people because he's been given a gift. And he gets recruited to be the flagship for the Star-Spangled Squadron.
And then this is a few more. This is I'm going to guess his name is Rook.
His name is Stronghold.
Okay, that's close.
Yep, very close. That's Stronghold. And then next to him is wiping her hands on his shirt is Stiletto, and then Dr. Quantum.
Dr. Quantum. Okay, I'm already in because this looks like a kind of a Green Lantern character, just because of the manipulation of energy.
Yeah, she's a force manipulator. So she was a young quantum physicist who was doing research into conscious manipulation of collapse of quantum waves. And she got so intense about her research, she accidentally triggered her own ascension. And so the U.S. government hired her both as a researcher and then also as a superhero. So she's super intelligent and can manipulate energy.
So do you have any people on the team? And I ask this because it's almost a trope now, who don't have the superpowers, but by golly, they can hold their own. Your Batman character, your Nighthawk character.
No.
So they're all going to be some level of superpower.
Correct.
Right. And wow, you got a huge team here working on this.
Yep. So that's our lead artist at the top, Meljoy San Juan. She's from the Philippines. She did all of the pencils and inks. And then we have two colorists, J. David Ramos, who's done a ton of amazing work for Marvel and DC, and then Rovell Umel, who's also done some awesome stuff. Rovell did chapters 1 and 3. Jay did chapters 2 and 4. Will Conrad did the patriotic cover. Jinky Coronado did the racy cover. And then there's me as the writer. And then David Campetti was my editor and co-writer on chapter 1.
Yeah. Now, how did you get hooked up with him? Because I've grown up on a lot of his stuff. That's his Hero Alliance, his Lost in Space. You don't have Exposure on here, but you can't.
I own Exposure though. It's awesome.
It is awesome.
Yeah. So
Al Rio was a god.
Al Rio was a god. I know. What a loss. David's actually doing a remake of Jade Warriors with Mike Diodato. So that's going to be coming out within the next year or so. I happen to be friends with a fellow named Jeff Palumbo, who runs Spinwiz Comics, which is an indie digital publisher of comics. And Jeff and I go way back. We used to work together at the Escapist magazine, and he was the original player of Stronghold in the superhero campaign. So Stronghold was his character. So when I set out to do the comic book, I reached out to Jeff and I was like, hey man, you've got Spinwiz, who would you recommend I reach out to about pulling some art together for this? And he introduced me to his friend David, because David runs Glass House Graphics, which is an art agency for comic artists. And so by working with David, I was able to access his entire talent pool, and just turned out to be a really great partnership. So he introduced me to Jinky, he introduced me to Will, J. David, Rovell, everybody.
That's perfect. You met the right person and got a whole team out of it.
Yeah, it was just a very fortuitous, I think role-playing games have occupied the place in my life that golf would occupy in a normal middle-aged man's life, where it's I do my networking over that instead of over 10 holes. It's let's do 10 rounds of D&D combat.
Network, let's roll some dice. So here we get into the tiers. By the way, you're going to want to replace this graphic block here after the show sometime, because you left the I off of David's last name there.
Oh,
no one's going to notice but him. And the one rule of publishing I've learned through the books that I've written myself: never annoy the editor. that's the first rule. But here are the tiers. What you would normally see over here, and I won't even bother looking over here now because they'll be bigger here. You get the PDF for $10, and for 98 pages, that's a heck of a deal. So I'm not a PDF person myself. I appreciate that I'm reading the one here, but I like to hold them in my hands.
Yeah, me too.
But I do get that we have a lot of viewers in the chat who have to have digital. So George, if you're out there, this is your tier. Robert Roberts, this is your tier. Jump in here and get this. trading cards, 3 packs. Each one with 6 cards, each one with the same 6 cards, or
Random.
So this is going to be true trading. Say, hey, I got two Auroras here. Who's got a American Eagle that they can trade me out for?
Exactly.
And this is no book. This is just the 3-pack of trading cards on this one.
Yeah, now that package is there. For instance, some folks have said, hey, listen, I want to actually just get a second printing of the Ascendant RPG. Is there a backer level I could do that? And so that's kind of like for those folks. They can buy in at the trading cards. They can throw the RPG as an add-on, and then they get some cool trading cards. And they get.
I got you. So you can get the RPG. It's an add-on, but if you just wanted to get that, say, oh, get something cheap, and then you can add it on.
Yeah.
Perfect sense. Here we get into the books now. This is the Patriotic Cover A, $30. Again, 98-page story here, folks. So, when you're used to saying, well, I'm used to paying $20. Yeah, you're usually getting 48 pages for that too. This is a book. This is a completed. I know the artwork is complete. You mentioned that, but is the story complete, or is this
lettering is complete? Everything's done.
But I mean, when you turn the last page, is the story over?
Oh, I see what you're saying. That story is over. Yeah, it ends. It has a satisfying resolution. It's left open-ended so that we can tell more stories. But it has a complete arc.
Okay, so just like the end of a Justice League episode, we're done. Everybody shake hands and go home. For $30, you can also get cover B. This is the standard. Okay, so the standard print edition, manga cover.
We have 4 standard covers. So there's the Patriotic, the manga, the racy, and the cosplay. And they're each $30, and you can pick whichever one. Each one, you get the digital PDF, you get all the stretch goals, and then you get your choice of cover. So we essentially have the Patriotic cover with the team assembled, waving, the American flag in front of the Capitol building. We have kind of your manga cover where it looks like, sort of a movie poster type vibe.
Yeah.
So the Patriotic cover is by Will Conrad. The manga cover is by Mel Joy. The racy cover is the 2 sexy female leads, Aurora and Stiletto.
And it's not even all that racy.
It's
not even all that racy. I mean, it's just them in their costumes.
Yeah, it's them in their costume. Yeah.
It's not like they're in the bubble bath or something like you'll see on some racy covers. And then you got a cosplay cover.
That's our cosplay cover. Yeah, and that's our model, Elisa Albrecht, who's an Austrian cosplay model who starred as Stiletto.
Very cool. And all of these are $30, guys. So it's not like, you can pick and choose and it won't raise your price. So yes, it's race. They're racing the motorcycle. That's what it is.
That's right. So
I was going to say that too, but I was like, nah, I'll let somebody else come up with that one. Serious savings here for the early bird special, by the way. If you get all 4, instead of being $120, adding 30 up 4 times, I can do math. Doesn't even have to be logarithmic. You can get all 4 for $80.
That's right.
Yeah, I was like, I just add the numbers. It comes up easy that way. Plus, you'll get all the stretch goals that'll be unlocked. And I haven't seen the stretch goals, but given where you are in this campaign, I think you have to unlock a bunch of things tonight.
I hope so. I hope so.
I just think you will. So you can get all 4 for $85. 98 pages, folks. This is going to be a brick of a package for the $85 you're getting. This is early bird though, so this expires. It doesn't have an expiration date on it.
There's only 200 available, so first 200 people can get it. Yeah,
that's easier to go with. First 200, we run out. Then after that, it's $100. Yeah, you save $20 still if you don't get in on the first 200. Indiegogo exclusive, which tells me you've got plans for this outside of Indiegogo.
Maybe. We'll see how it does. But yeah, I wanted to have a cool Indiegogo exclusive. So the idea here is it's a black and white version of the book, and it comes with a sketch cover. So
okay.
It's aimed at collectors who think it would be awesome to go to a convention and have Jinky Coronado draw up a custom cover for them on the sketch cover, and it has the inks are so clean and so nice that I thought we should do a version that really shows that off. So that's what that version is.
Okay, so with it being the white sketch cover and it says featuring art by Mel Joy San Juan.
She's the interior artist. Yeah.
She's the interior artist. Okay. Just making sure that it was like, well, maybe they're crediting her for the logo, which, by the way,
No,
looks really cool.
she's the interior. Yeah.
All right. For $60, you get, now we're getting into the foils. So you get the racy cover. It's going to be foil. You're going to get the digital download. You're going to get an exclusive Stiletto foil trading card.
Yes. So Stiletto is the female protagonist, and she's the counterpoint to American Eagle. So if he's the Silver Age hero, she's the Iron Age hero of the group, and she's one of the two point of view characters in the book. American Eagle.
She looks dominating.
She is. So her backstory is that she was a child of privilege whose parents ended up falling into a bad crowd, becoming indebted to a cartel and being killed for that. And she drifts into sex work and ends up becoming a dominatrix, and a very successful dominatrix who has the misfortune to end up securing as a client a high-ranking cartel member who kind of gets off on killing people by day and then being a submissive by night. And he ends up getting exposed in his antics and blames her for that. And so she begins to be brutally tortured to death by him, which triggers her ascension. And the way ascension works is it is somewhat manipulated by the set and setting in which it occurs. So Manticore became a Manticore. American Eagle became this protector that he thought he was meant to be. Stiletto gets really fucked up because she's a dominatrix who's in the middle of being tortured, and so when she ascends, and so she becomes kind of this ultimate dominatrix character who can cut a man's throat with her razor sharp fingernails, very difficult to kill. She can exude pheromones that influence people to make them under her control, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So she's
this is kind of a mature book then.
It is. It's probably PG-13. There's no nudity, there's no toplessness, there's a lot of skimpy outfits, and there's some gore and violence.
So the next tier here we've got after the foil one is for the 4 standard prints and 1 exclusive print, which would be either the foil or the sketch cover. You can take your pick on this one.
Yep.
$150. And if you just say, you know what, I don't want to choose, $200 gets you pretty much every copy of the book, right?
Yep.
That we've seen so far, because there's another tier. This one comes with all 6 print editions and the RPG game that everybody's been asking about. So
That's right. That's your ultimate gamer bundle. It just gets you everything I've ever made for the game, as well as all the graphic novel stuff.
So that's everything. What comes down here? The Ultra Collector Edition bundle. This is going to get you the 4 prints. That's going to get you the 10 packs of trading cards, the digital download, the graphic novel with the foils. This does not come with the game that I can see here.
Right, but you get your own custom sketch by Mel Joy.
Yeah, that's the big seller there. Anytime you can get original art, folks, take the opportunity. If it's within your budget, it's not always within mine, but I collect as I can. Comic shop exclusives. I love seeing these. I love seeing retailer tiers that allow these books to get into stores, because not everybody's shopping on the internet for their comics.
True.
We like to browse shelves and pick up what jumps out at us. So if you're a retailer, you can get 10 copies of all 4 of these covers for $500. That is, I'm not even going to do the math on that one. It suddenly became logarithmic in my head.
It's all priced out to match what you'd get at wholesale pricing. So
okay. So yeah, I mean, if you're a retailer, you already figured this out. It's like, okay, yeah, that's a good deal for that. Get them in your store, and I will definitely be sending this on to Cosmic Comics, because I know they love to get crowdfunded materials in their stores for their clientele, because they're a very boutique kind of comic shop. Comic Emporium exclusive. What's the difference here? This is 20 copies. Oh,
You get more
Easy
stuff,
enough.
and you also get a stand-up of Stiletto, like a movie theater style stand-up.
Okay, so you have to be a dealer to get the stand-up.
You can buy it as an add-on if you really want to.
You'll sell a bunch of those. You know what else is good is pillowcases.
I didn't even think of pillowcases. I should have done Huggy dolls. Like, what are those ones?
Oh yeah. But yeah, those like the 5-foot long pillowcases that go on the body pillows. You can get you can have them. You can have them. Well, that's what I think they're called, as body pillows, usually because they're like the length of your body.
You do a stiletto body pillow though, and you make it really uncomfortable, and it's mean to you when you sleep.
Well, then what you do then is you flip it over, and it's Aurora on the other side.
That's
so
right.
You have a sweet and a spicy side.
It's reversible.
This is what I do, Alex. I give people ideas in the show. I spend your money on tiers. $10,000 national distributor exclusive. I hear what y'all saying. That's an audacious goal to have as a tier. You ain't seen nothing yet, and then you're going to have to sit back on your heels on the next one. This is 200 of each copy. That's a lot. And so what do they get other than, a big old box of books? They get a right of some kind, right?
Yeah, I mean, they would get the right to be the distributor. But the main thing is it's a very, very deep discount. And I just felt like it's very hard as an indie sometimes to get into the distribution networks. And I've had some bad experiences with tabletop games trying to do so. And so I thought to myself, look, let me just make it really easy. If someone can get me into distribution in comic books, here's a one-click way to do so. And I'll make it worth their while. And as it turned out, I actually hit that $20,000 goal. The art team, as I mentioned, is mostly from Manila. They're mostly from the Philippines. Meljoy San Juan, Jinky Coronado, Rovel Yumel. And so in the process of building out that team, I happened to connect with a Filipino businessman who was very interested in the comic story we were telling. He told me that in the Philippines, it's like the 1980s United States. We still love guns and sexy girls and capitalism. And I was like, do I have the comic for you? And
exactly. We have a lot of comics for you.
So we connected, and so he decided to be the international distributor. Which is just epic.
So yeah, that's why, folks, that when this campaign kicked off just a scant few hours ago, $10,000 goal, already at $23,000. That was a good tier to have back. I'm going to reload it right here just to see where you're at. You're now at 24,311, and that means that we get to enjoy our shake and bake moment, Alex. If I can find where I put it. Been a long time since we had a shake and bake moment. There it is.
It's shake and bake, and I help.
That is because anytime a campaign goes up while their creators are on our show, we take the credit for people finding it.
Well, thank you.
That's because of us. It probably not, but we're just gonna have fun with it and say, hey, well, you were here, you went up some. You'll think to come back next time. This is
now all I need to do is have as much success in America as I'm having in the Philippines, and I'll be golden.
Yeah, it's somebody in America who is a distributor and says, you know what, I want to get in on this role-playing game, distributing the trading card, distributing the comics. Jump on that. You'll be set to go. There won't be any. You're going to want to be doing book number 2 real soon, I hope.
I hope so. Yeah.
Is it in the plans?
Scripted. We've got book number 2 scripted. We don't have it penciled and inked or anything. So. I used the capital I had to get done what I could. So now we have to grow.
Well, you are well capitalized now. Scrolling down to see if there's anything else. Okay, the add-ons. That's what I wanted to see. Wow. Oh, geez. Okay, so these are add-ons that aren't part of any tier, and now I've definitely got to get involved because hey, Shay the Red Valkyrie, there's a patch. They're the patch people. They love the patches.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I just thought to myself, like, what what would be the most fun stuff that I would really want? And I thought it would be hilarious to have a membership card for be part of the Star-Spangled Squadron, a patch, trying to just kind of play up the whole military vibe for it. So the challenge coin. Then some of the stuff is based on the RPG, and then we have an ash can, which is based on some prototype art that Jinky Coronado did for me in the early stages of the product. So you can see the very earliest illustrations of Stiletto. And then, of course, we don't have the body pillow, but we do have the stand-up if you want that.
You do have the stand-up. It's $120 for the stand-up. Well, how tall is that? Is that like your usual 5 foot?
Yeah, it's like 5 foot. Yeah.
Yeah. Hardcover, RPG hardcover. So the rules of the game are not in some flimsy, floppy softcover that's going to get worn out the more you play it. This is.
Oh no, the rules. So I should show you the RPG is a beast. Hang on here. So this is the RPG.
Oh my God, that's an encyclopedia.
Yeah, it's a beast. So no one could accuse me of not giving value for the money. We definitely do big size books here.
Definitely a huge book. So if you are RPG players, you'll be wanting to add that onto your purchase. You're going to get the trading cards just to get the game. So we had the stretch goals, which we have not unlocked yet. You're aiming for the stars on these stretch goals here. Good, because you're going to hit them. At the rate you're going, you're going to hit all of them. 30,000, you're going to unlock that Aurora card. We haven't talked about Aurora. We've seen her, but we don't know who she is, what she does. I like her quote, "Always be fabulous." That kind of tells me a little bit of what to expect from her.
So Aurora is she's an Instagram star who was a competitor on America's Next Top Model. And her whole life, she's just dreamed of being a star, dazzling in the spotlight. And she ends up having her ascension trigger because she has a meltdown when she's booted off of America's Next Top Model and just essentially is, "No, I'm a star." And so she gains light control power. So she literally becomes a star. And so she's actually very, very powerful, but she's a little bit fish out of water and very much kind of fronting it because she's having an existential crisis where now she's, popular, rich, famous, beloved, but she feels like it's not really for her. It's because of her powers. And so she's got everything she ever wanted, but she's not really sure, what's going on in her life.
I got you.
Yeah. So she's very fun. And she and Stiletto have a little bit of a love-hate relationship when they first meet. So.
Well, they do definitely look like opposite sides of the same coin there. I mean, she's all pink and fluffy and light, and exactly. Stiletto's dark and leather and dominatrix.
Exactly.
So it'll be fun to watch them interact. At 40,000, you'll get the two of them on a mini print. Mini print, I'm guessing, is like the size of a backer board.
It's like it's like no big.
You flashed it too quickly there.
Oh, this isn't the mini print. This is the GM screen. I was just saying approximate.
Oh, okay. I got you. 50K, we're going to go from 98 pages to 104 pages. So even a bigger bang for your buck on this one. And then we're going to see a new character that we have not heard about. At the point where you unlock 60K, you get the Maximum Leader Magnet. So who is the Maximum Leader and why are his powers magnetism?
His power is actually cosmic control. Maximum Leader is his name is Maximilian Danixjold. To tell more about him would be to spoil some aspects of the story. So I don't want to go into too much detail so that people can enjoy it as they read.
Good guy or bad guy? Can you tell us that much?
He's beyond good and evil. He's a former professor of Nietzschean philosophy, and he believes that humanity must ascend in the same way that Nietzsche believed that humans needed to become superhumans. Same kind of concept.
Got it. 70,000. You're going to get that Dr. Quantum bookmark, paper or metal?
It's laminated paper.
Okay. Yeah. Works just fine as a bookmark. 80,000. That patch is going to become a part of everybody's package.
Yep.
And at 90,000, this card. Okay, this takes me back because when I was in college, 1985 to 1988. Comic shops had, they always had these little promos they'd throw in your bag to advertise something. Well, for whatever reason, I had an Avengers membership card. And it was like, it didn't advertise any book. It was just, it was plain white on the back, and the front was just like Avengers, and it had a little white square with the A going over it.
Right.
Well, when I was in college, I worked for the student services, which meant I took care of all the student IDs. So I took my ID picture, I razor bladed out that A, and I tucked it into behind the A there, and I laminated the card. And then because I was on the newspaper, I had the black tape that you would use to underline headlines and stuff. I ran that across the back to look like a magnetic strip, and I laminated the entire thing. I had that thing for 25 years. I don't know where it ever ended up.
That's awesome.
It was in my wallet forever. I just whip it out at comic shows like, yeah, I'm here with the Avengers.
Totally.
I don't know what I thought I was going to do with it. I just think it was one of those cases where I'm like, I have the tools, I have the technology, let's do it.
I would have done the same thing, and I would have kept that forever. Yeah.
It landed somewhere. I don't know where. At 100,000, you're going to upgrade the book to 112 pages. So when you upgrade the book, are you talking about expanding the story, or do you have more like backup content that can be added to it?
It's going to be backup content. So the story is complete, but what we're going to do is add some backstory elements to it, as well as some, pinup type art.
Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. That means that you're not padding the story. So, we got to rewrite the story because we wrote a stretch goal.
The story's pretty tight, and I don't want to mess with it. But you could certainly. So there, it's broken into chapters. So one of the things we're going to do when we expand it is, as I mentioned, the backstory of the universe is all told in this epistolary format with government leaks and things like that. So what we're going to do is we'll include some of the transcripts of the government leaks and DARPA footage and stuff like that. So it'll be like an immersive, almost like found footage storytelling experience.
Yeah, kind of like the backup material that they had in Watchmen back in the day.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, all those dossiers and stuff.
Exactly.
Which, I still not read the entire article about owls. I'm like, why is this here?
Right. Yeah. So I have a theory of storytelling for geeks and escapist entertainment where I think that you want to have something fractal, right? So there should be a story that a person could sit down and enjoy at a very superficial level. It's got action, it's got dudes in capes, it's got hot chicks, it's got villains that we hate, and you can just enjoy it. But then it should be you zoom in and you're like, oh, there's more depth here than I realized. Here's some more cool little tidbits. And then you can zoom in further. And Tolkien was the king of this, right? Like you've got Tolkien scholars still zooming in 60 years later, and they're like, did you know that in this, So that's kind of the approach I've taken. It's a very fractal story. You can enjoy it as a 96-page standalone that's exciting and fun, or you can really dive in deep and be like, what are the conspiracies that are being woven here? And what does this one sentence on page 14 mean, and et cetera?
I'm liking that. I just refreshed again. You're at 24,381. You're going to, I know what you'll do because I've been here before. You're going to refresh all night and watch this climb. And then, after 2 days, it's going to plateau for the next 30 days. Are you planning on going 30 and then another 30 and then in demand, which is like a traditional path?
Yeah, probably. We'll see how it goes. I'm definitely signed up to do in demand. I'll do 30 and then we'll assess.
Well, you'll definitely be funded, so it'll be it's up to you at this point whether you want to take it on or not.
I would really love to hit it. I'd really love to hit some of those stretch goals. I feel like you get, a really nice virtuous circle where, the product becomes better. And so more people want to buy into it, and then the product becomes better. And it's like, so I'd really like to see that blow up, but.
All right. Well, is there anything about this graphic novel that we have not talked about tonight that you've been wanting to make sure people are aware of?
Gosh, you put me on the spot. I feel like
this is how I cover my butt and like, oh, I forgot to ask this. They'll know.
No, I feel like you covered most of the interesting stuff. I mean, it's I created in part because I've been disappointed with the direction a lot of comic storytelling is going, and I realized almost all of my favorite comics are at this point 10, 20 years old. And it shouldn't be the case, right? Like, my favorite video games aren't 20 years old. My favorite movies, some of them are 20 years old, but there's been recent movies I liked, but I just, I haven't really enjoyed the direction that comics have gone. And I wanted to make something that was the sort of comic that I really liked. And, I was a child of the late 80s and the early 90s. And that's kind of the art vibe that the book has. And a little bit of the general kind of rah, 80s vibe. American Eagle would have fit in completely well in any 1980s action movie, played by Bruce Willis or something. And, it's a little bit like Christopher Reeves as Superman teams up with Pamela Anderson as Barbed Wire. So.
Oh, I like that comparison. I can actually see that. Kicking off the next hour of the interview with one question. I'm kidding there, but you talked about how you didn't like the direction that comic books were going. Do you see the same thing happening with the RPGs? Because that is, your oeuvre. Because I know there have been a lot of discussions about, hey, Dungeons and Dragons is changing this way and that way. And the old TSR guys can no longer go to Dragon Con because they're banned for, thinking something differently or saying something out of character. What's your take on the RPG market right now in that regard?
Well, I've avoided a lot of that because of the space I operate in. So my games are up until Ascendant have all been old school Renaissance OSR games, which take their inspiration from the 1970s, 1980s tabletop gaming space. And, so I think the old school audience, by virtue of being old school, is less affected by current trends. Certainly, I think in every creative industry, there's been an increasing politicization and an increasing lack of tolerance for differences of opinion on political matters that I think can be really choke creatives that don't necessarily want to follow whatever the current mold is of that particular day. Prior to doing independent tabletop game publishing and independent comics, I was a media executive. I founded the escapistmagazine.com back in 2005. I ran that for 12 years. We won 6 Webby Awards as a team. And, I ended up selling that company to Define Media, worked out in Los Angeles. And I really watched the transformation of the space. Video games, tabletop games, comics as a whole, I really watched it become much more political and much more toxic, and it was very unpleasant to see happen. And it used to be the case that to be a geek, was an identity that brought everyone together and when a shared love of things, and that's just no longer the case, and it's very divisive nowadays. So the way I look at it is, I think there should be comics for everybody. There should be games for everybody, but not every comic needs to be for every person. Not every game needs to be for every person. It's completely okay to say, this is my comic for this crowd. And if you love it, you'll love it. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. Go elsewhere. And so, I know some people are going to hate Star-Spangled Squadron, and that's okay. They can hate it. Some people will love it, and that's okay. They can love it. I hate some things. I love some things. It just is what it is. Not everybody wants to drive a Jeep Wrangler. Not everybody wants to drive a Volvo.
I think everybody can pretty much agree. Well, as soon as I say that, it'll be wrong. But I think a lot of people can pretty much agree with that entire assessment. It's like comics themselves are for everybody, but your specific comic may be just for a certain crowd. I think where people start getting, their panties in a wad, for lack of a better term, off the cuff, is when somebody takes a comic that was for a certain group, and because of the way they want to write it, now it's not for that group anymore, it's for another group, and it feels like something's been taken away, and you're like, why did you take away my toy? I was enjoying my spy drama, and now it's a cooking show.
Yeah, I wrote an essay about that. It's interesting. There's actually an art historical term for that. It's called spoliation, and it's when a piece of art is removed from its cultural context and repurposed in a new cultural context. Spoliation. It comes from the Latin word for spolia, from which we get spoils of war. Yeah. And it has historically been practiced by conquerors. Anytime they conquer a civilization, they engage in spoliation of the conquered's artwork or buildings or structures or statues. in order to repurpose them. And so, for instance, the Christians did it when they assimilated and conquered pagan Europe, so that, this pagan temple is now a Christian church, this pagan saint is now a Christian saint, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we're seeing that happen now, sort of in our quote culture war here in America, is these cultural icons are up for grabs, and rather than look at them as creative creations that have a life of their own, the way Tolkien thought of Middle-earth, right? Where he thought of Middle-earth as something that existed distinct from him, which had its own sub-creative truths. Instead of treating them like that, they get treated as spoils of war that are used as pawns in cultural warfare. And I personally find that terrible. Like, I think if you take on a creative project, created by someone before you, I think you have a responsibility to be true to the existing vision. And I know that that's an unpopular viewpoint right now. And, Amazon is spending $1 billion on Lord of the Rings, and clearly the people that are doing that don't agree with that viewpoint. And clearly they're much richer and more successful than me. So they probably shouldn't listen to me. But I take a different approach.
All right. Well, yeah, I completely agree with all of that. This is your creation, your IP. Hold it close to the vest. Don't let anybody else get involved in it and take it in a direction that you didn't want it to go. That's the advantage of ownership.
Netflix, call me.
Oh, well, yeah, but you just make sure the contract is written to favor you.
That's right.
But yeah, call Netflix. They're throwing money at everything these days. Even Mark Miller can only get like a season out of some of the stuff, and his, I thought Jupiter's Legacy was a heck of a show.
Oh, it was so good. I loved it. Yeah, it was so good. I can't believe they canceled it.
Yeah, after one season, I'm like, the first couple of episodes were a slog, but I'm like, once I figured out, we're going back and forth in time,
right.
And now we're all caught up, and now the action. Oh, the twist. I got to come back. What do you mean I can't come back?
Yeah. I can never predict whether or not something's going to become a second season on Netflix. Like some of my favorite shows, one season and done. And then others, I'm like, this was terrible. And I'll come back and like 10th season.
Yeah. When did that come in? I just finished binging Chuck, which I was aware of, but I had never, really watched a lot of it. I think I had one season on DVD and I watched that. So I started this thing out. I'm like, this is a comedy spy thing. And, by the end of the 5th season, it's a very dusty room and my allergies were kicking up. And like, what happened to this comedy that I'm sitting here kind of, sniffing at?
Really? So I haven't seen Chuck either. Do you recommend it?
Definitely recommend it. And I just, as I was IMDbing it to see how long it was. It's 5 seasons, by the way, technically 4.5 because the 5th season was short. I saw that Zach Levi is trying to bring everybody back together for a Chuck movie, which
nice.
I'm all for. And I think the gods are aligning on that because I was in a restaurant. I was in a Twin Peaks in Rogers, Arkansas, and I'm eating. I'm like, that music sounds familiar. And it was the Chuck theme song, which turns out is Cake's Short Skirt, Long Jacket. I was like, why am I hearing Chuck in the restaurant? So
are you based in Arkansas?
I am. I'm here in the Ozarks in Holiday Island.
Oh, right on. I'm down in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina.
Been there. Used to live in Cameron.
Oh, nice. Right on.
It's a great area. Ponderosa Trail. So I was out in the woods. I used to work in Sanford.
Okay. My father-in-law lives in Sanford.
Yeah. I would drive to sometimes go to Raleigh to pick up comics, but normally I would go to Fayetteville. I would go to like Dragon's Lair. If that's the name of the shop. I couldn't remember if it was Dragon's Lair or Dragon's Den, but but there was one, I think it was Capital Comics in Raleigh that I would go to every now and then to get new books.
Yeah, I think that's Capital Comics. Yeah. I haven't been to a comic shop in a while because of COVID. We had they actually had us locked down fairly tight in North Carolina. But usually when I do, I go to Atomic Empire in Durham, which is a really nice comic and game store. That's become
boy COVID hit the comic shops hard. That's why I have that's the origin of the LCS Guys show that we have every Saturday night. Was I wanted to reach out to different comic shops and see how they were dealing with it. So we had my at the time local shop in St. Louis, Cosmic Comics, and then Michael Tierney's shops in Little Rock, Arkansas, and Yule Carter's shops out in Sacramento, and they were all dealing with it differently because they were dealing with different laws. The one hit the hardest was the one with the least restrictions. Actually, it was Michael Tierney's two shops in Little Rock. There were no mask mandates at the time, and he was staying open. They were not told to close down and send people home. But Diamond, quit sending him new material, so he had an open store, employees, and nothing to sell to generate revenue. So what ended up happening was that his employees quit because they didn't know where their jobs were going to be afterwards. So rather than wait for the closure, they left ahead of time. He was one guy trying to run 2 stores all by himself. Said, this is the best. 40 years that store was open. 40 years. So he closed up the brick and mortar, and he works out of his house now doing mail order for his customers who still wanted to get comics from him. And throwing more of his time into writing his own science fiction series and the photo he does. He's done an Edgar Rice Burroughs art chronology, which is on Amazon. It's one of these 4-volume hardcovers in a slipcase that just reproduces, totally cleaned up, every cover of everything that had an Edgar Rice Burroughs story in it. So all the Tarzan comics, but all the pulp magazines and the paperbacks, beautiful paintings. He's doing the exact same thing now for I almost said Phillips Howard Lovecraft, and that's not correct. Howard,
Robert Howard,
the Conan guy. So he's going through. He's up to the comics level now on that one. So it's going to be another beautiful, beautiful set of artwork and history, because he's writing history alongside and correcting a lot of history, because he's finding a lot of stuff on the internet that is on web pages, and he's finding books printed before that totally contradict. It's like, nope, that's not what happened at all.
Interesting.
In Howard's own hands. So
if
you're a Howard fan, you're going to want to get that.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you so much for coming on here tonight and bringing Star-Spangled Squadron, the Ascendant team. Ascendant's the universe. They're the Star-Spangled Squadron. So
that's right. Yeah. It's like
leads me to
Marvel Ultimates or something. Ascendant.
Yeah. Marvel's the Avengers, because they can't say the Avengers anymore because Steven Peele exists. So if you're going to market it, you got to change it around. Does this mean that we might see books in the future called Ascendant, some other team of heroes or villains or subtitles?
Absolutely. There's several other teams in the universe. There's a Chinese team called the Soaring Sabers. There's a Russian team called Spetsikatron. There's a villainous group called Exodus. There's a group called Dreadnought Security, which is superhero private police that are beginning to deploy. So it's a big universe to play in, and hopefully I'll get to build it out and create my own personal Marvel/DC universe empire thing.
Fantastic. We're behind you all the way on this one. Alex, thank you again so much for bringing it down here. 451 at this moment as we're closing out.
Awesome.
Hope that you'll come back before this campaign is over so we can talk about this some more.
Would love to.
Folks in the chat, thank you so much for being here tonight. We don't have a show if you're not here watching it. I say that all the time, and I truly mean it. We're very grateful that you're here. And as always, while you were here, we just hope you had a blast. Good night, everybody.